Joining us now is someone who has spent a lot of time working with Donald Trump on some of his biggest projects. Barbara Ress is a former Trump Organization executive vice president. She's also an attorney, engineer, and the author of Tower of Lies, What My 18 Years of Working with Donald Trump Reveals About Him. Barbara, you know, the public has gotten used to a rinse, wash, and repeat cycle with Trump in which he is let off the hook, including by many Republicans who see no evil, hear no evil, and embrace conspiracies and election lies in the wake of January 6th, as you know all too well. Based on what you know about how the Trump Organization works, do you think that Donald Trump himself is in legal jeopardy here? What do you see happening this week?
It depends on what they have and what they're going after. You know, I hear them talk about going after the Trump Organization, but the Trump Organization is not General Motors. It was just a kind of loose thing that we called ourselves, and I think it was incorporated, but later, after I started there. I'm sure that every operation that he has is held in a separate holding company or an LLC. So I'm not exactly sure what entities or where they're going with this. Now, as far as Trump is concerned, if they were to get evidence against Trump, it would be to the extent that really nothing major has ever happened to my knowledge. And this is confirmed by other people that worked with him much later, that he doesn't know about. Nothing major. So he is in this with his, both legs. And I think that if they get something, it'll be to go after Trump. Weisselberg, I'm surprised he's not talking. I don't understand. He can't get a pardon. I mean, that sort of explains some of the other people. But Trump has something on him, I would imagine. That's the only thing I can think of. And if he does consider, refusing to flip, and the expression flip implies guilt. I mean, why would Trump say, oh, he won't flip? Of course, if flip, that means he's got something. Then he deserves to go to jail for a long time.
And CNN tried to get him on the record about this yesterday. Let's listen to that, Barbara.
Is there any information that you would like to give us regarding the case?
No comment.
Do you currently pay taxes on the apartment or car that you own?
No comment. Nice.
Okay.
Sometimes the questions aren't very nice. As you know, Weisselberg's cooperation could be a turning point in this investigation. How valuable would Weisselberg be, do you think, knowing what you know about the organization?
Well, in its present form, Weisselberg is probably the most informed person there, the person that knows the most. As they say, bodies are buried. I think that Allen is essential. They did interview Jeff McConney, who works for Allen. He's the controller they call him. And he probably had a lot of information. He may have had information on Allen and Trump, both. So, it's hard to say. They play it close to the vest. You don't know what they have. But Allen is definitely the key guy.
And Barbara, knowing what you know about Donald Trump after all of these years, do you think he belongs in jail?
It's not only what I knew of his personality and the way that he operates, but what I've observed over, 20 years or really the last 5 or 6. Certainly, I mean, that's an opinion of a citizen, not even somebody that knows Trump. But I do know him, and I know that he's very deliberate, very measured, and very vengeful. And he doesn't follow the rules. He never did follow the rules. So does he deserve to go to jail? I imagine he does.
Are you surprised by what happened on January 6th and everything that's happened after that?
I was horrified by it. I didn't expect anything like that. What happened afterwards is just a disgrace. It's an absolute disgrace. And now, in retrospect, it looks like Trump and other Republicans may have very well been involved in that insurrection, as we call it. We'll see.
Today, lawyers for the Trump Organization are expected to meet with prosecutors in the Manhattan DA's office. Apparently, they're trying to convince the district attorney not to pursue criminal charges against the company. Our Kara Scannell broke the news. She joins me now. Okay, so let's talk about what possible charges these are related to. And also, Kara, I'm just interested, does that ever work? I mean, going to someone and saying, please don't do this?
Well, Poppy, this will be the second meeting in 5 days. They met on Thursday. This meeting now is expected to take place today, and this is kind of a last-ditch effort to try to convince prosecutors not to bring charges against the company. This is something that is common when a company is under investigation, but prosecutors, it appears, are pretty ready to bring this case. I mean, our reporting is that they could announce charges unless something happens today, as soon as this week. Now, the issue here is that they're investigating the company and the chief financial officer, Alan Weisselberg, for failing to pay taxes on certain benefits that were provided to executives, including Weisselberg. Those include, rent-free apartment, company cars, and for the case of Weisselberg, even potentially school tuition paid for his grandchildren. Now, at the meeting on Thursday, an attorney for the former president, Donald Trump, told me that they met with prosecutors, they presented their side of the story, that a lot of these cases are usually handled in a civil manner where there are penalties and fines on taxes that weren't paid, but not criminal charges. Now, he said if they do charge the company, that would be outrageous and unprecedented. He also said that if the company's charged, they will enter a plea of not guilty in the case and ask the judge to dismiss the indictment. So a lot at stake today in today's meeting, but it is a high bar, Poppy, in order to convince prosecutors that this case they've been working on for months is not worth bringing.
But then, if this happens, if there are charges, they plea not guilty. If they don't get it waived by the judge, this would ostensibly go to trial unless a plea was reached, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the process here, if the company is charged and if Alan Weisselberg is charged, then the next step is, would it go to trial? Would there be a plea? And in the case of companies, they usually do reach some kind of agreement, which is then, an indictment against the company, potential conviction, and then usually there are penalties and fines associated with that too, Poppy.
Okay, Kara, thank you for the reporting. Let's get into it a little bit more. Our chief legal analyst, Jeffrey Toobin, is with me. Usually cases like this are civil, not always. Lay out what you see happening here. And I'm just very interested in does it ever work to go to the DA and prosecutors and say, please don't do this, back off?
It works rarely, but it is customary to allow defense lawyers to meet before an indictment is filed and point out to prosecutors reasons why the case should not be brought. In a high-profile situation like this, I think it's extremely unlikely that it would work, but the fact that these meetings take place is not at all unusual. What's unusual about this case is that, first of all, it's a corporate prosecution, apparently, and corporate criminal prosecutions take place rarely because criminal law is not really designed very well to deal with corporations. Criminal law is about deterring and punishing individuals, and when there is a corporate case, all that can happen, really, is that there can be a fine. So it is almost like like a civil case. The other thing that's unusual about this case is that it just seems like it's pretty small potato stuff. I mean, the idea that you're going to build a criminal case around, not paying taxes on a company car or other sort of benefits, the Trump lawyers, I think, have a point. If that's the whole case, that is usually handled civilly. So we'll have to see whether there is something more to this case than just an ordinary civil dispute.
So, Jeff, where would that point get them then with a judge?
Well, again, it would depend a lot on the kind of evidence that's presented. How much money is involved, how intentional the violation was, whether this was a knowing violation of the law or simply a good faith mistake about how to account for taxable income. That depends on the evidence that would come out. But, it is worth remembering that, when people talk about the Trump investigation, they have been talking about money laundering. They've been talking about tax fraud. They've been talking about, foreign involvement somehow in the Trump case. If all it comes down to is this sort of minor, what really does seem like minor stuff, I think that's worth calling attention to.
Yeah.